and CEO of Leading Edge Consulting, a global executive coaching firm with offices in Connecticut and Florida. Vanessa identifies herself as a change agent and a facilitator of change. Vanessa uses a holistic approach to assist clients in dealing with change, from identifying roadblocks to success to creating metric-driven action plans and goal setting to effectively manage change. Vanessa, a frequent contributor to the CEO magazine, held senior level and C-suite positions, leading high-powered executive global teams overseeing major change initiatives with Sunlight, Prudential, MassMutual, Aetna, and Yukon Health. Ladies and gentlemen, here is V. Vanessa Williams to enlighten and inspire us to trust in change.
Thank you, thank you. My first act is to try and wiggle this off without dropping it, like they do on the Sprint ad. Can everyone hear me? Oh my God, can everyone hear me? Super. All right, I walk around, and if I look at you, it means I want you to say something. Is that fair? This is going to be a little bit of interactive. And just to get us started, I have a couple of disclaimers. Who am I not? I got you laughing. Cool. I am V. Vanessa Williams, but I'm not going to dance for you tonight. I might sing if I have a couple of drinks later on. But I'm hoping that we have a little fun. What I want to do today, based on all of that change that I heard that you've been going through, oh my gosh, I want to share a few stories about how I, on a personal and professional level, manage change. And I believe those tips, what I use myself, are really the same types of tips you can use every day. When I'm coaching executives who are going through the same kinds of change, they're either trying to think about how can I keep my third generation company working and moving in the future? How do I get new people to come on board and work with those who have a legacy in the company? Or it might be we want to grow and we want to bring two companies that are very different together. That's a lot of change. But I also work with executives and individuals who are dealing with personal change. They might have an illness that they just discovered. They might have a job loss. It happens all the time. And believe me, that's something that I had to go through. And it makes you take things into perspective. So, it's going to be a mix of things. I've got some slides, but I'm not going to really talk to the slides. It's really so that you have something to reflect on after tonight. So, if I look at you, it means nod, laugh, and enjoy. And let's make this a conversation. Let's make it interactive. Is that fair? Sure. Great. So, imagine this. You're in your office. I met a couple of folks from Cigna, so I know this probably happens. And it's a group of people, and someone comes in and says, our employee engagement survey shows our numbers are in the tank. We're not really engaging. Or they might come in and say, we are going to bring in some new technology because the government wants us to keep track of dead people. They don't want us to pay dead people money. Could be something that simple. And you've got to take this great idea and say, great, and go back to your staff and talk about what we are going to do next. You've got to talk about and convince them this is a great new thing. And some of you might be on the receiving end of that, where some manager comes in with an idea. Have you ever had to do that? Sure. And when you did that, did everyone say, yes, we want to do this? No, they probably said, no. They probably said, we've done that before. It's not my problem. I don't want to do that. Not my job. Are these familiar? Have you had those be the things that one-on-one or in a meeting, a client, your staff, they've said? No one's had that happen. No one's had it happen. Anyone over here, have you had that happen? And what did you do when they said, not my job? Beautiful lady in the blush jacket.
What did I do? I said, oh, okay. And thought about it.
Okay?
What do I do next?
So that's happened to me a lot. That's what I used to do. Oh, okay, because I went into that room fully prepared that everybody was going to say yes, just like me. And what you get is the wall of resistance. The wall of resistance that you're going to get if you don't do one very simple thing. Engage everyone in the conversation up front. Because change is scary. And people don't like change for one basic reason. They don't know what they're going to get from the change. They don't know what's in it for them. They don't know what they don't know. And I've used the approach I'm going to share with you on a couple of levels. I used it when I lost my job for the first time. Because I had to go home and tell my husband. That was not easy. I used it when I didn't get a promotion that I worked really hard for. And I used it when I was diagnosed with cancer. And this small step helped me, my staff, my family in each of those cases. And believe me, I've dedicated my life to one thing: breaking through, jumping over, working around, and getting under, busting that wall of resistance down, particularly when the resistor was me. And most of you, when you're leading the change, who's the first person you have to start with? Yes, yourself. You have got to believe yourself that the change is possible and that you can build a team that believes in you to get to the end point, that goal that you have clarity about, but they don't. So this simple exercise is really, you can call it 4 doors, you can call it 4 questions. I like to think of windows, not because I want to jump out of one, but because it's easy for me. And it's really pretty simple. So when you think about change, it's either, what is it I'm going to keep doing? What is it that I'm going to stop doing? And what is it that's new? Pretty simple, right? All right. So I am going to use, as I walk through this, the example of a company who was putting in place a work-from-home policy. And it happened to be one of my clients. And when the leader went into the meeting with the staff to say, good news, we have gotten approval for a work-at-home policy, nobody was happy. Can you believe that? Nobody was happy. And they weren't happy because they didn't know what that meant. So all they were doing was sitting there saying, I've been told. And no one asked me what I thought. No one asked me for my opinion. But I've been told. So what we did in this meeting is I said, just pull out 4 pieces of paper and let's talk through each one. Now, as I'm talking about this, think about, as I had to do, if you were just told you were diagnosed with cancer. The first thing you're going to say is probably, let me clean up my language, oh darn, right? I use this whole process. So what are the things, if you're being told you've got to merge with another firm, or you can now work from home? You think about, what are the things we used to do and we can still do? No change, right? Take the fear out. Then you think about, what are the things we couldn't do and we still can do? So by now, if you're looking at your staff, you're going to see them go from sitting like this, sitting back in the chair, to leaning in. When you see someone in your meeting relaxing their shoulders and leaning in, you are connecting with them. The third one, this is when they might sit back in the chair. What are the things we used to be able to do but we cannot do now? So that's change. Spend your time on that, because that is where the fear is going to reside. But then change your tone, change your mindset, change your heart, and talk about what are the things that you couldn't do before that you can do now. So the client who was introducing a work from home policy talked about you don't have to sit in traffic anymore. What's wrong with that? I talked about I didn't have to worry about my hair for a while. That to me was a really, really good thing. And just a funny thing about that, when I got my diagnosis, now I'm a pretty conservative dresser. I had the night before looked at a magazine and saw this beautiful woman who was my complexion, and she had blonde hair. Now it was out of a bottle, but it was beautiful. I decided, before I went home and told my husband, I went to just some hairstylist, I don't know who it was, had my hair dyed that color. I looked god-awful ugly. It was horrible. But I had to get connected with myself first before I could go into my office on Monday and talk with my staff about the change they would be going through because of me. I had to get over what? That wall of resistance. I had to get over being afraid. I had to go through and think about what's going to change. What was it that I used to do that I couldn't do anymore? Did it matter? And what was it that I was going to be able to do? Not worry about going to the beauty salon for a little while. And that was good. And then my doctor said, your hair is going to grow back different. And it grew back better. So find what is going to work for you to first break through the wall, so that when you're talking with your staff and you're saying, it's going to be okay, you have to believe it first. Now, a couple of facts, because you are the kind of people who like data, right? Okay. So I'm not going to just stand here and not give you some data. I've got to feed you what you want. So trust. And trusting in the process, trusting yourself can be fun. Learning to be confident about what you believe in can be fun. But these are some interesting stats. Let me bring them both up for you. 51% of employees don't trust management. So how many times have you had someone from leadership proclaim, we are going to do X, Y, and Z? And 2 or 3 years later, it still hasn't happened. They haven't told you when, what, and what it means to you. You're just waiting. Doesn't build a lot of trust, right? 72% don't believe, and I'm going to change CEO to leaders, are a credible source of information. Now, why is that? It's because we as leaders don't take the time to ask our employees, our clients, what the change means to them. How do they feel? We overlook the fact that in order to really embrace change, you have got to think of the person sitting across from you. You've got to ask them, what do you think about that? Just like you did. Oh, interesting, but tell me what you think about it. Does that make sense? Are you surprised by these numbers? Not at all. All right. So my light bulb moment certainly was when I was diagnosed with cancer, but another light bulb moment for me where I hit the brick wall of resistance, my own personal resistance, was in 2007. I was up for a big promotion at an insurance company, not in Connecticut, but close by. I won't say which one it was. And my boss came to me one day and said, Vanessa, I put you in for that corporate vice president, senior VP role twice. And it was not approved. And he said, I'm shocked. I don't know why. But people just didn't support you. They didn't like you. And he and I are sitting there saying, how can that be? My ratings were good. I did everything correct. I got the results. My KPIs were right on the money. How can that be? We didn't know. So the first thing we did is we asked for help. How hard is it for all of us to ask for help? To get buy-in and engagement? Tough. Lesson number one, when you're trying to get others to embrace change, ask for their help. You'd be surprised. When you show you're vulnerable and you need help, people will start to buy in. And to buy in, you have to give everyone a chance to weigh in. So we brought in a coach. Second thing we asked a coach to do is talk to everybody that was considered a stakeholder to find out what was the issue. And what we learned was, although everyone had great things to say, they didn't feel I needed any help. They didn't feel I was willing to ask for help. They didn't feel I was vulnerable. And for them, in that organization, at that time, it was critical. So, second lesson, find out what's important to your clients, to your staff, but first, you've got to own it yourself. You've got to embrace what it is you're hearing. The coach talked with over 20 people and really came back to me, and I had to make a decision. Was I going to go out the front door and run away? Or was I going to step back behind the wall and be part of the parade and try to get everyone who had something that they needed from me that I wasn't providing a chance to be part of my team? I created advocacy and fellowship. And you have to do that when you are embarking on change and you need others behind you. You've got to get people on your team. You've got to not be in front of the parade. You've got to be part of the parade. I call that quiet leadership. Does that make sense? Embrace your change first. Others will follow. Others will follow if they trust you, see you as genuine, and know that you're willing to ask for help. Does that make sense? And what I also had to do was listen to what others are saying. How many times do you say, please speak up, challenge me, I want to hear what you think. Ask questions. Don't just do as I say. I want healthy debate. And then you tell everyone what it is you want. I didn't even know I was doing that because I was so focused on, we've got to get this change implemented. I didn't want to take the time to ask, what are you thinking? I wasn't courageous enough to step back, undo, redo until we got buy-in. And you're going to hear me say this, but in order to get buy-in, people have to have the chance to weigh in. That is very important. You see it at home. If you have children, I have 4 cats. So I'm talking about something I don't relate to, but even with the cats, they have to know that the food I'm going to buy is the food that they eat most often, so they weighed in, right? You've got to make sure people are on the team. So you're probably wondering, did I get the promotion? I did. I got the promotion. The feedback was great, but what made it happen was people said universally, Vanessa is not afraid of Vanessa. And I took that as I wasn't afraid to face that brick wall. I took my own hammer and I burst through. I wasn't afraid to say I got to slow down, I made a mistake, because I saw what was on the other side. And for all of you, based on what I heard, you've got a lot on the other side. And you need everybody in that parade going with you. But then I had another tipping point. While I was going through my cancer diagnosis, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the things that I did with that, because it really was a huge change for me and a huge challenge for me. But when I was going through that, right literally 2 days before I went in for my surgery, I got another job offer from another company. What do, right? Do you go through life change, or do you go through career change, or do you do both? So I had that I was dealing with. I also was dealing with the fact that my team, like so many teams, was afraid. My team at that insurance company over the hill that I'm not mentioning, they were scared. Because you know how it is. When your leader is gone, things happen. But when you look at this, if you have trust in your team, think of the performance that you can get out of your team. Threefold. So what I did before I went in for my surgery, I pulled my team together and several of my colleagues together, and we talked about some of the 3 essentials that were important to me and important to them. And it kept the team together. And I really believe if you spend time on these in any change that you're going through, you have a very good chance of getting engagement and buy-in. So if you combine my 4-window exercise with this, you will get there. Now I'm going to just bring all 3 up. Number 1, just to repeat it, it's a constant theme. People, whether it's your family at home or your team at work, need to know how they fit in. Spend the time going through the conversation, the exercise of talking about, what does this mean to me? What does it mean to you? Work through that with them. And spend the time adjusting your vision. You can't say, I want to hear from you, and not make any changes. I have one client who constantly, they call him the fire hose. He comes into meetings, and there's always one project added on to another project. Do you have any of those clients, or do any of you do that? They never know where they stand. So we had to facilitate a conversation with them that talked about, what's in it for you? What's your role? What do you want out of this? How are you going to embrace the change? Improve the flow of communications. And what I mean by that, and it's a pet peeve of mine, I do not like town halls. When you are trying to promote change to your staff, think of small groups. Think of advocacies in the company. Think of having others, once you get them drinking your Kool-Aid, have them communicate the change. Don't rely on town halls. Don't rely on emails that lay out the change and talk for you. Get smaller groups. So when you are communicating change, do you oftentimes just do town halls, or how do you communicate change when you're doing it? How do you do it, Mark?
We have staff meetings and we have directors meetings.
All right. And when people leave those meetings, do you ask them to share the information, carry forth the message, continue the conversation throughout the organization?
We're so small that it
So people know.
it happens naturally.
Awesome. Awesome. So if you could take what happens naturally for you into larger organizations, think of the power there. Think of how you'll change those trust numbers. Think of how successful you can be. So back to when I had my cancer scare. I got through the cancer scare. I had knocked that wall down, and then they told me I had ovarian cancer. And I'm saying at that point, holy hell, this has got to stop. I don't have enough hammers in my house to knock this darn wall down. So for me at that point, I did probably the opposite of what most of you would do. I accepted the other job because I felt I needed a change. I needed a way to embrace what life was throwing at me. And I needed a way to move forward. So I started working with my doctors, my team of doctors, and I did something that I think now is really commonplace. I created a team approach to my care. Everybody who had something to do with my care, think about this like a team. I pulled them together. I pulled my oncologist, my plastic surgeon, everybody, the nurses together to map out what it is that I needed and what I needed from them. So if you transfer that to the business place and you have a big problem that you can't get through, do you do it on your own? Do you ask others for help? Do you let others know that you are afraid? Do you let them know you need them to help you through it? Or do you, instead, you're the leader, you're going to go in and tell them what to do? I would ask you to be courageous. People will embrace you and the change if you let them in. I had to be engaged not only at work, where I was, but where I was going, and in my own personal dilemma, because I needed to be strong for those around me. And I needed people to see that I could get through the change. So you're dealing with a lot of change as an organization, as a profession, as an association. Your clients are dealing with a lot of change. I would ask you to put yourself in their place, in your boss's place, in the president's place. Think of yourself. Change is hard on you. First step, admit that it's hard on you and be engaged. And think of that wall and think of a hammer and crack through. Bring those people around you who can help you. If you're a small organization, it's easier. But if you are a large organization, it is not. If you're working with clients that are multifaceted, it is difficult. But you have to take a team approach. You have to be part of the parade. I stepped away from being out in front and leading, and I reached back and asked people, help me get through at work and at home and in life. And how did we do that? Common goal. I remember when I was at Prudential, great company, and that was a company I went to. And they hired me because they wanted to do a lot of their work offshore. So I knew going in that I was basically designing a way that my job would probably be eliminated, as well as a lot of other people. And I remember the day I stood in front of an audience of people to tell them that we were embarking on a project to design an offshore entity. 400 people, employees, all levels, all types of work situations in a room. And I stood there and I cried. Because what I knew was I was affecting each and every one of them. And I stood there and I asked them if they would trust me that I would keep them informed every step of the way. I would ask for their help every step of the way. I would help them if they chose to look elsewhere in the company or outside starting that day. But I would always be honest with them. We got the project done on time. They embraced why we were doing it because they knew, because I told them why. We didn't lose anyone while we were going through that project. They stayed. And why? Because I was open and honest. I asked for their opinion on how to do it. I asked for their input on what would work and what wouldn't work. I kept them aware every step of the way. If I didn't have the answer, I told them. But most importantly, they trusted me. You have to have a team where you can be honest, and that team will be behind you. And it won't be you embracing the change. It'll be the team embracing the change. 75% of change initiatives fail because we forget the people aspect. Does that make sense to you? So I want to leave you with some very concrete things, and then I want to spend some time with some Q&A and just to hear some of your stories. Know where you are going first. If you happen to be a new leader and you are trying to change how you go about your mission, don't assume everyone else is going to understand what you mean. Be clear yourself first, just like that wall. You've got to own that wall yourself before you ask someone else to own it. You've got to make sure you know where you're going. And then you have to communicate it. Do your homework. So much of our history can help us define our future. You don't want to be paralyzed by the past. You don't want to be paralyzed by that's the way we've always done it. But you do want to learn from your past. Find individuals in the company, others who can tell you the history. Look to see what other companies in your situation are doing. The accounting industry is not the only industry that's gone through major change. How have other industries handled that? Don't give up. I never gave up. Bonnie, how are we doing on time?
We're doing well.
Okay. Number 4, this is more for your staff than you. They need to learn to say no. Invite your team to speak up, challenge, and say no. And that is very hard when it's to you that they might be saying no to. But if you don't do that, you don't have honest dialogue and open exchange. Number 6, expand how you define success. For me, success was all about living and being seen as a nicer, kinder person. And I tell folks, cancer made me nicer. It made me humble. Almost not getting a promotion made me humble. It made me get out of my own way. It made me embrace my possibilities because I was going to get through it. And I only did that because I did not give up. I've talked a lot about compassion, but what I really want you to think about is compassion in the workplace. What does that mean? It means engagement. And if you are asking anyone to go through change, you've got to be personally invested. Does that make sense? And I love that jacket. But you've got, I told her that in the beginning. I'm going to sing for that. But you've got to be personally invested. You've got to show compassion. If you do one thing, go back. Be generous with your time. People will follow that. They will respond to that. One of my favorite quotes, and it resonates when I talk about team versus you being the one out in front. Don't make the mistake I did of thinking if I come to you and I say it, if I say, we need to change the vision, here's what I have in mind, I want it done by Wednesday, you're going to walk out feeling really good, right, Bonnie? You're going to say, I got that, I'm going to do that. And you're going to walk out of that room and you're going to say, not happening, because you don't believe it. I didn't take the time to say, Melissa, I really have a great idea. I want to share it with you. I'd love your opinion. What do you think about that? Where Kristen might say, well, we've done that before. I don't think that's going to work, but this might work. And you might be thinking she's not going to go for that. And I might say, well, I need more information. And I'm going to talk to other people. You're going to leave that conversation feeling you mattered. Be courageous. Be courageous. Let people know you need them to embrace change. You need them to help you get through change. And you will. A lot of the change that I heard is really about others and your industry, regulations. That's still scary. Don't mistake what I'm talking about as not being related to what you're going through. Your staff needs to understand what's that change going to mean to them, what their role is, and what you need from them. As a leader, people mirror you. You are what people see. How you show up, Dennis, is exactly what people are going to see. So if you're showing up and it's different from what you're saying, people aren't going to trust you. You're not going to get the performance. But if you show up the way you're talking, people are going to follow. They're going to believe in you. But you have to allow your team to decide what role they're going to play. We all have two choices. You can opt in or you can opt out. And I really believe we're all put on this world for something special. And if you think about what you want to see on your headstone, it is not, for me, she met all of her KPIs. I don't want that on my headstone. I don't want that to be what people put in my bio. I don't know about you, but I would like for people to say, I did something that counted. What I did mattered. I made it easier for them to accept the regulations. I made it easier for the industry to shift how it interacts with its clients. I made it easier for more people to join the profession. I made it easier for the members to get benefit out of being a member of this wonderful organization. This is my absolute favorite quote. And the reason I think it's relevant to change is because in order to really drive change, you have to know the past, you can't stand still, and you have to be ready to pursue the future. And I think that speaks for itself. You've got to think about who you are. Bring it all. Bring every bit of you to the table. Don't leave it back. Leaders of tomorrow are the leaders who bring their full self every single day to everything they do. Successful, top-performing firms, as one of the previous slides had, are those where there's a high degree of trust. So if you bring leaders who are bringing themselves fully to any situation in an organization with a lot of trust, that's a lot of power. Questions, conversation. What kinds of experiences are you facing today? Catherine.
I am in a new situation because I am not CPA. I'm here representing my husband, who has actually a brand new job with SageWorks, so which is a profit sense.
Okay.
He's selling software, accounting software. So it's I'm kind of feeling out of my element.
Well, you shouldn't be. You're with friends. We're all going through the same thing.
I did actually meet an old friend from high school there, Corliss. And that was so great. So yes.
So how are you helping him with this change?
I'm being very supportive and making sure that he's has everything done around the house, so he has that piece around him. It is a job change for him. He used to work in Catholic marketing, and huge job change. So and he's working for an old kind of boyfriend. So it's
Oh, interesting little tidbit there. Oh,
college.
good.
Yeah, very interesting. Very
Good.
interesting. But they all trying to support him as much as I can.
Good.
Get some people to call him, get demos and stuff like that.
So you're being open, you're listening, you're helping him to think through, and you're there. That's great.
He's also kind of shy. I'm a real extrovert, so.
Yeah, I'm shy too. I am.
Maybe it's not a bad thing.
I am. Bonnie, what are some of the changes that you and your organization are going through? If I can put you on the spot.
Sure. I think that our organization is experiencing a number of changes. The profession is seeing changes as they welcome new professional accountants into the community with this new CGMA program.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we're all seeing changes both in our state and our country that are impacting us all in our businesses. And I'm viewing those all as changes or challenges, that if we face them the right way and trust in change, that can be incredible opportunities for us. So I'm very
Great.
fortunate that I'm part of a new team, the ACTPCA.
Yay!
Over here. The board has been fantastic. The members have been fantastic. So far, my last 5 months have included a great deal of change. But as far as I'm concerned, it's all been incredibly positive. So we're just going to keep on going that route.
Keep pushing. Get some hammers. Knock through the wall. Knock through the wall. What are some of the other challenges or experiences that you can share with those of you in the room? I've not known accountants to be quiet. Did I tell you I used to be an auditor? It's a true story. I wasn't a very good one, though. But those accountants I knew, they were pretty jovial, not quiet. So come on, some comments. I'm not allowed to walk past the line. Or I'd come and get some of you in the back. Mitch, you thought you were going to get away, huh?
We're sitting pretty close, aren't we?
You're right here. So what are some of the big changes that you are trying to grapple with at work?
Let's see, the partner I've been working with for the past 2 or 3 years retired in February. And the coworker that I work closely with left the firm about 2 months ago. So a group of 3 dwindled down to a group of 1, and so that's a change I'm dealing with. It's a pretty big change, getting used to just kind of being a solo act in the Harvard office right now.
Great. So group of 1, but you've got how many people here tonight?
Oh, absolutely. This is
So you're expanding your definition of a team. Great. So
climbing the hill every day.
climbing the hill, knocking that wall down. Awesome. So Mitch got us started. Bonnie got us started. Anybody else? Yeah.
We are 2.5 years into a merger with 2 different offices, New Haven and Fairfield, and still going through, hopefully coming out on the end of going through the growing pains of getting one culture, one message, and not having 2 separate offices, or 2 separate firms, but have it be 2 separate offices, but 1 firm.
And how are you doing that?
It's been, I mean, it's death by committee. We've had,
Someone tells the truth.
we've had a lot of those to get messages out and get different processes there, and kind of merge the 2 best practices. And I think that we've done a pretty good job with that. And, but it's been work.
Good, good. Just a suggestion, and you've probably already done it. Have you and those leading this change gotten out and talked with one-on-one some of the folks at the very front lines? Awesome. Awesome, awesome. That's a great example because so many committees are made up of a small group of leaders who sit in a room, closed door, scares the bejesus out of people, and they think you're talking about all kinds of things. You think you're talking about them. Instead of bringing a diverse group together where you can have people who represent all facets of the organization in that room. Good job. Anyone else? Bonnie's not giving me the evil eye yet, so I want to make sure. Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You spoke a lot about how leaders get buy-in for change. Can you speak a little bit about a peer-to-peer relationship and how you try to get your peers to buy in?
Yes. Well, first, I don't know enough about the relationship, but okay, the question is, how do you create peer-to-peer buy-in, right? And what I commented on first is not knowing the relationship. So I'm going to assume you have a solid working relationship, okay? I think you have to pull that person one-on-one and simply, as I said in my talk, let them know what you need. Let them know what you're thinking about. And ask them, can I count on your support? And if they say no, which they might, say, let's talk about how I can get your support. What am I missing? What am I not missing? I would encourage you, don't do that in a group meeting. It's got to be one-on-one, but you've got to go in prepared for that person to say, I'm not there yet, but don't give up. Ask the question, what is it going to take for you to get there? And I do believe, over time, they might not come right in the middle to where you are, but they won't be so far away as they were when you first had the conversation. One-on-one, face-to-face, ask the question, how can I get your support? Here's what I'm trying to do. Does that make sense? Okay. Anyone else? Well, thank you. Bonnie, thank you so very much.